This is Real Talk, the Customer Insights Show with Jenn Vogel. Join Jenn and her guests for this live discussion around topics that will help you understand your customers better. Also available on podcast channels. This live stream is presented to you by Vox Pop Me, the leader in video research. Here's today's live conversation.
Hello, Insights professionals, marketers, and everyone who wants to understand their customers better. Thank you for joining me for another episode of Real Talk, the Customer Insights Show. We're live on LinkedIn, Twitter, and YouTube, and the podcast version will be available on podcast channels soon. Before we get started, the last reminder that the Virtual Insight Summit takes center stage this week, starting on Wednesday, 8 a.m. East. If you haven't registered yet, you can do so at the link below. To join a virtual event unlike any other you've experienced before. Let's get to today's episode. Video surveys have made it easier for brands to get feedback from customers quickly and in a way that they can use to improve customer experience. Today, we are joined by an award-winning insights professional who has used video surveys to the fullest. Elisabeth Trawinski and the Insights and Analytics team won an internal award for putting consumers first at Reckitt, and also the Video Customer Insight Award at the 2021 Viddys. Here's how she found out she had won a Viddy.
Hello.
Elisabeth, hey, it's Dave from Vox Pop Me. How you doing?
Good, thanks.
Hey, so I'm calling with some really great news. So as you know, you were nominated for one of our video awards for the Video Customer Insight Award for some of the work you've been doing at RB around the kind of outside in project, and delighted to say that you were kind of chosen in the voting as the winner of this year's Viddy for Customer Insight.
Oh, that's so wonderful. Thank you so much. I'm so thrilled. I mean, we've had so much success with outside in inside the walls of RB, and it's great to have the external recognition. Thank you.
No, that's amazing. It's so great to see what different teams are doing with Vox Pop Me and how they're leveraging video. So yeah, very much deserved, and super excited to see what you and the team do next year with the tool.
She's joining me on the show today. Welcome, Elisabeth.
Thank you so much for having me. I just love watching myself on video. We all do.
I know it's a little uncomfortable, but we were so excited to share that with you. And, that award obviously was important to us at Vox Pop Me, recognizing some of our really innovative customers. But that was an award that, or that work that you were doing was recognized internally at Reckitt also, which is really exciting.
Yeah, it was. Really, really was. It's great to get that internal and external recognition.
Absolutely. So before we get into the show, I have a question for you that I like to ask all of our, and that's from your experience, how has the role of consumer insights evolved in the recent past, and how do you see it continuing to change in the future?
Yeah. So it's an interesting question because I think in some is similar to what it always has been, which is essentially understanding consumers, shoppers, customers, and turning that insightfulness into something that an organization can use for a sustainable competitive advantage. I think that's always been the role of insights, and in some ways, becomes more and more critical every year as the world changes, of course, in COVID, as well as competition gets more fierce. So in a lot of ways, I think that objective is similar, but I think the context of all of that has changed a lot, right? If you think about to data and how much faster data is and how much more data we have than ever before, as well as all the different ways that we have to connect and understand our customers and our consumers, like video insights as one example that didn't exist years ago. So all of that, and then of course layered onto that, we have the expectations of our internal stakeholders around agility and speed and the need to make decisions faster. And so I think that where things have changed a lot is kind of, the ways that we work, the tool, more so kind of this skill set around putting pieces together to derive insights quickly is even more important. So I think that the insights professionals kind of who will be most successful in the future will be the ones that really can kind of harness this new world, and use it to kind of basically uncover insights faster and better than the next person kind of using technology in new ways as well.
Absolutely. And that's really interesting what you said about kind of managing, or, there's all this expectation from internal stakeholders that you can do things faster and that you can make decisions faster. Like, how do you manage those expectations? And, it's not everything should be done quickly, right?
No, I totally agree. I mean, I think that sometimes what I try to say to people is like, data is fast, insight is not as fast. It doesn't mean insight is slow, but insight by its definition is something that you come to that kind of shines a light on something that not everyone knows. And data is easy for lots of people to know. It's kind of turning that into something meaningful that is the harder piece. And I think that sometimes there is that lack of awareness or respect for that. And so I think in a lot of ways it is just more of like an education of people and showing them through real examples of like how much value I can bring to you if you give me that bit of extra time. And sometimes bringing them along the journey, right? And showing them, look, this is when I got this is when I got this. And now here's what I'm delivering to you as something really meaningful as a result of all of that.
Yeah, totally. Because the data alone isn't as actionable, right? It's just data. There's just a ton of information. And like you said, there's so much more data and new data always becoming available to us. And really like figuring out what to do with it is the thing that maybe takes a little bit more time.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially as an internal insights organization, right? I mean, some of the things, anyone at an organization can pick up a phone and talk to their supplier partners, right? Which is fine. But then why have an internal insights organization if you're just going to be the middleman between people? That's not what we're paid for. Like, we're paid for the brains to kind of put all of that together. So.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a ton of value in that. And so, okay, so tell me a little bit about your journey into the role of consumer insights. How did you get started? What do you like about it?
Yeah, I think like a lot of people, I just kind of fell into it. I don't think I knew that this field existed when I was, in a teenager or in my early 20s. I studied math and computer science in undergrad, but I also love the arts. I grew up doing a lot of dance and fine arts. And so to me, actually, market research and insights was kind of this perfect blend of the two of those things. There's so much creativity, I think, in what we do, but also so much rigor in what we do. And so, I remember when I was completing my undergraduate degree and I was going on these job interviews and I had no idea what I wanted to do. And I was interviewing at some banks and, the interviews were kind of boring. And then I interviewed at the company where I got my first job, which was Nielsen Basie's. And the interview was fun. I mean, they were asking me like, oh, if you launched a new soup in the winter time, what are some of the things you would think about? And there was no right or wrong answer. It was just like, it was just enjoyable, And so I left that being like, that could be a job for me. And so I've spent my entire career in research as a result of that. And I think that it really is kind of what we were talking about before. Like, the fun stuff is the aha moments, right? The times when you just see something a little differently than someone else. And then you use that to bring a new marketing opportunity kind of to your business partners. And I think the other piece to me is that insights people or most of the people that I find that work at insights, like, just love learning, right? It's all about learning something new. The point of it is to see something new, not to just keep repeating the past. And so if you are a person that kind of loves that discovery, you have that sense of curiosity, this can be a really rewarding field for that. And that's what I found.
Yeah, totally. I love hearing people in the insights industry tend to come from so many different backgrounds. And I've talked to people who were like psychology majors and just really like to understand what motivates people. And like you, that I love what you said about the balance of creativity and rigor between math and fine arts and creative thinking. There doesn't seem to be like one clear path. And it's not like you can't study research in college.
Yeah.
But I mean, I, as a marketing major, took an SPSS course, a marketing research 101 course in college. But, you know, it always seems to be this really kind of diverse set of backgrounds and thinking that come into the industry, which is really interesting.
I totally agree. And I think that's what makes it fun. I think, you know, I've spent probably the majority of my career now on the client side, the so-called client side, kind of working mostly for consumer goods and pharmaceutical companies. And part of what's fun about being in this role is you do get to see so many different other companies that have been started by people from such diverse backgrounds, to your point, and that brings so many different perspectives. And so you really can learn a lot from all of these different people who've started all these different companies with like just a slightly different lens and bent on how to understand people better.
Yeah, absolutely. And so I want to talk about the awards that you won. So both the Internal Reckitt Award and the Video Customer Insights Award from the Viddys. Tell us about the work that you and the team were doing that led to that recognition.
Sure. Yeah, so I mean, I like to think that my team and I do work that should be awarded on every day for everything that we do. But
Absolutely.
in particular is a program that we call Outside In, and as named, you know, is really about bringing that external lens inside the walls of the company. And we started it before COVID. And at that time, it was a monthly program where once a month we would create videos on a particular topic, you know, either something that the business was really focused on or something happening in the world that we just wanted kind of our people to have a perspective on. We would often link it to kind of trends in the marketplace and deliver it via email. And then we had actually started putting it on like the TV monitors inside the building. But I think with COVID, it kind of took on a new meaning because, you know, especially like in those early days, like, you know, March, April of 2000, everyone was kind of, you know, just in this brand new world. And so we actually started with a few videos that were really more for like employee engagement, so to speak. So we did some that were funny, you know, like who's your new office mate? And people talked about their cats and their dogs and their children, you know, and it was funny. It was meant to be funny and sort of, you know, lighten the mood on something that was really, you know, serious in so many ways. And then people giving, so like, you know, that's great that all of these people are so frustrated about living with having their children around all the time. But like, what about me? I'm living by myself, and that's really hard too. And so then we did a video about that and kind of, again, trying to sort of almost like educate our internal people about what everyone was going through. So it wasn't with that intent, but it was, you know, it served that purpose. And then we started linking it more to our external consumers and customers, kind of what they were going, sometimes with levity, and then other times, yeah, just trying to understand changes in consumer behavior in some of our categories, how certain rituals in their lives may have changed around holidays, et cetera. And so it really, you know, at its essence is an empathy program, and really, I think, got a lot of life in COVID and a lot of importance, and yeah, it is really just that sense of, you know, what are people thinking and feeling, and we serve it to, you know, a broad group of stakeholders in the each consumer research that often, but it still is important to kind of keep a pulse on how people are feeling. So
yeah. I love everything about this program. I think, like, you know, insights in general tends to be very ad hoc with a very specific research objective attached to it. So hearing about something like this that's more kind of ongoing and, more general, trying to understand what's important to consumers or how are their mindsets changing, and the way you described it as an empathy program, I love that. But how do you prioritize something like that and really get others to see the importance of it when there's so much pressure to, meet that ad hoc research objective?
Yeah. I think one of the things that worked for us with this program is that it's light touch and easy, right? It's not this, in the past when I've tried to implement consumer closeness types of programs, that means everybody has to go out into the field and it's a day of work and then we have to have a debrief afterwards. And it's this whole thing that, and I don't say that to mean it doesn't have great value, because they do have great value, but it's resource intensive in terms of people's time, and it can be expensive and everything like that. I think what worked for us here is that these videos are 2, 3, maybe maximum of 5 minutes, and they come out once a week or once every 2 weeks, right? So it's not like we're asking for so much. We're asking for a little to give you a lot, and I think that that's really worked. And I do think that the video format has been helpful, right? People have been so inundated, but with so many decks and so much, so many PowerPoints and emails and stuff. And I think that, watching a 2 or 3 minute video is so much more digestible for folks. So I think that's really helped.
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess how can the other stakeholders in the business, marketing teams, product teams, do better work by having this level of understanding and empathy for the consumer?
Yeah. I think it's almost sort of more in those smaller everyday decisions, right? Sort of the gut decisions, right? So still, when you're making a huge decision about an opportunity or a risk, you're going to go to your robust, tried and true market research tools. But there's so many decisions that we make every day. And I think that, as seasoned marketers, you can make those decisions and often be right. But a lot of what's informing your decision is that experience in the market and the history. And I think the idea behind this is that this is in the back of people's minds, whether it's it's not making the decision for you, but by understanding people better and having that real sense of what they're going through when you're making some of these decisions, it's just kind of part of that kind of more innately. There's, can't remember exactly the quote, but there's sort of this idea of you are not the people that you serve. You might be some of the people you serve, right? But you're not exactly the people that you serve. And a lot of times in decision making, you may not even be aware of it, but you're making a decision informed by your own personal experiences. And so the more that we can just give exposure to other ways of life, other realities, that can kind of help us do things that will connect with a broader group of consumers better.
That's so true. I often say that, when I'm, I have an opinion about something based on my own experience, I'll say, I'm a sample of one, but this is how I feel about this or whatever. But I love that, this kind of deeper understanding and empathy for the consumer is sort of just ingrained. It's not that you have a question and you've, done some research and you've got the answer like that. That's a lot of the work that you guys are doing on a day-to-day. But throughout that process, even with understanding, well, what questions do I need to ask? You just have a better understanding of what people are looking for or what's important to them or what's going on in their lives. And that feels like, that gold standard of what all these amazing brands are looking for is a deeper connection with the people who they're serving. And it feels, I think, to a lot of people that certainly that I've talked to, that's really hard to get that, how do you really get that close to people? But it feels like you guys have kind of cracked that in a way that I love that back of your mind, just ingrained in what everybody's doing.
Yeah, we're doing our best.
We love it. It's great to see. So what specifically is helpful to know about consumers?
Yeah. So, I mean, so much, right? Like everything. I want to know all about you, but I can't. And I'm joking. I mean, it isn't and shouldn't be about everything. I mean, I think in a lot of ways, that's part of like the important role that we have is kind of trying to figure out what, if we learn something, what will actually make a difference into our decision making and ultimately our business results. And a lot of it, I think to some degree is like, is trying to figure out what will tell us something new, right? What will be that new lens or that new understanding that will really unlock something. And it's not always easy to kind of figure out what that might be, but it just reinforces to me the importance of not jumping into research without truly talking through, like, what are we trying to solve here? Like, is it a problem we're trying to solve? If it's an opportunity that we're trying to take advantage of, what do we know about it already? What are some of the questions that if we get answers to that, we think it will make a difference or not? And sometimes you know, and sometimes you don't, but I think trying to sort of tease that out and ask those questions of yourself. Like, if I learned this, do I think it would be helpful? If I learned that, would it be helpful? And then iterating. I mean, I think that's the other piece, is like kind of going into a project, assuming that you're not going to get all the answers the first time, and that good research actually opens up some questions that you may not have been thought about ahead of time, and that then, you feel like, some of those you're going to need to go answer.
Yeah. It's hard to ask that question of like, what is it? How am I going to get that thing that's new that nobody else knows yet? I mean,
I know. It is. And I mean, I think that that's where, it's the art of asking questions when you're thinking about what your research is. Like, it's the art of asking a question to a consumer that is not leading and not so specific that you already know what answer you're going to get, or they're going to give you the answer they know that you want, but also not so broad that you're trying to boil the ocean, and kind of trying to find that balance and think a little more expansively than you may want to, but not so far. So there's that piece. And then I think there's the all important, listening component of how you listen for things that you may not have heard before, or the nuances of it that then you want to pick up on and kind of drill into. I think it's, there's this interesting thing in research that sometimes people say, oh, well, that's an outlier. That's an outlier, right? If it doesn't connect with what I already know, then I'm going to dismiss it. And actually, yes, sometimes you should, of course, but then there's actually that's really the interesting part that you should be digging into and kind of exploring a little bit further. And again, to your point, how do you know more? That's the beauty of, experience and experimentation to some degree.
Sure. And that's such a good point. Like, when something comes out of research that goes against something, it could be right. And the thing that you knew that was true yesterday may not be true anymore. And being able to figure out when that's the case versus when something is actually an outlier, like, that's a huge challenge.
Yes.
And even what you were saying before about, like, I'll be to my business, or what decision could I make as a result? But what about the things that you don't know that you don't know? Like, there's so much to discover, right? And yeah, I don't envy the work that you do. It's there's a lot of parts and pieces to it.
Yeah. That's what keeps it fun, though. I think that's why you meet people that have been in the industry for so long, because every day can be a different kind of challenge, which is great.
Yeah. And I think we've seen that, especially in the last year, of a lot of what we knew changed very quickly. And having a blank slate was, in some ways, obviously, everyone went through a very difficult time and are still in some cases, but kind of for those curious to learn. Probably a lot of good stuff came out of that.
Yeah, for sure. I agree. It is a fascinating time to be in the industry, and I think also has kind of elevated the importance of the function in many companies, which has been really great.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think businesses have had more questions than ever for you guys, which has been great to see. And so I guess then how do you keep leaders and stakeholders, other departments informed about the insights that you're uncovering?
Yeah, I mean, I think this is an evolving journey, honestly, and one as well that we had to kind of rethink a little bit with COVID, because I think, pre-COVID, we were just doing what a lot of insights functions do, a lot of kind of sharing of learning and using that to kind of build hypotheses and actions and stuff like that. But, we do that virtually, of course, now. But yeah, I mean, I've been thinking a lot about this and how, what are some better ways that we can make people interested. Certainly there's information out there about using video, using infographics, using newsletters, things that are not the 100-page PowerPoint deck, that creates a little bit more engagement and stickiness. On the topic of video, I think that it's kind of similar to qualitative research in the sense that if you give people information in PowerPoint and with some data, they will take that information in. But what really sticks with people is when they hear a story about it, right? And so whether you're making your data into a story, yes, we try to do that. But I think when somebody's in somebody's home, right, and that person tells them a story of their life and what this product means to them, people remember that for years sometimes, right? I hear people telling, I saw this consumer once and they, that's where I think the idea of using videos to bring your insights to life can really help kind of make people informed, but also make them, more interested to pay attention and also make it stick in their brain a little bit better. But we're also trying things like making our email subject lines more interesting so people actually even open the email in the first place, which is, job number one.
I love that now we've got some clickbait emails going internally to get people to look at the findings.
I know. Yeah. I mean, it works for me in social media. So why not give it a try?
Exactly. I mean, like you said, I mean, the information that's in those PowerPoints and that's coming out of that data is so important, but if people don't pay attention to it, then it's useless, and all that work that you guys are doing. I love turning data into a story is one way. What you said about infographics, getting creative with, it doesn't change the data or the results, or, maybe there's some new insight that's come out of the video or, something, but getting people to pay attention to it and action it is probably the biggest challenge. So it's great to hear some kind of creative approaches to that.
Yeah, no, I agree.
And so how does this, that kind of creative sharing, how does it help to keep buy-in for, particular objectives, making sure that the stakeholders in your business are seeing the value in a particular project or a particular program that you're running?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's important. And I think that, what we also, try to do with this is make sure that when you have senior people that get engaged in things, then it trickles down the organization. And so what I've found useful is that when, we're able to kind of serve our insights and get them through to the more senior members of our team, then they start asking the questions or raising, did you know this? Look at this idea that was coming out of that, and then it kind of creates more more interest kind of throughout the chain, because I think people know that if their bosses are looking at something, they better look at it, which is not to say I don't care about everyone. I mean, I think we do. And a lot of times, getting the people that are doing all of the work to be more insightful is equally important. So kind of, I think, approaching both different groups of stakeholders and kind of making sure that, you're really activating at both levels is quite important.
Yeah, absolutely. And you guys are prioritizing all the time and probably pulled in a lot of different directions. So, it helps to, if you've got that buy-in from both sides, like you were saying, and activating those two groups, it probably helps to, to focus. And so we've already talked a little bit about, the Outside In program and some of the work you've done with video. What role have video surveys played in, uncovering those new insights, those new learnings that you're talking about?
Yeah. So beyond, I guess, definitely what I've spoken about already has yielded, interesting insights. I think the other place that I haven't talked about yet that we've been using video is sort of in the early stages of a project, whether it's understanding a new target segment of consumers or a new benefit area that we haven't really done a lot of work in. We've used video sort of like as an early stage qualitative to just kind of get some understanding from people about, what the reality is, and getting their language and understand, so if down the road we're going to do more of a robust survey, how do we even know how to write the questions? What are the questions to ask? What are the answer choices to give them? The video insights has been like a quick and very consumer centric way to kind of just start that learning process, which I think has been really, really useful in a number of cases. And then sometimes, of course, after that kind of survey where maybe something we wrote we didn't quite understand why people were saying that. And again, kind of digging in a bit more to understand the whys has been really useful.
Yeah. And I guess like what we were talking about before about the, that pressure, that expectation to do things faster, make decisions faster. How do you, fit that in ahead of a study, right?
Yeah. I mean, and I think that is kind of the beauty of the video platforms, is that they are very fast. I mean, it's, the ability to get the feedback via video is much faster than we've seen, like, setting up in-home ethnographies and all of that. So it has kind of been able to fit into our timelines a lot better, which has been great. And it does also give you that look into people's homes, right? Which is quite nice, because we've definitely used the videos to see the context and the surroundings of that, and not just have to, just be in focus.
Yeah, totally. There is another layer of empathy of just us being in our homes and talking to no longer kind of in a manufactured environment in some ways, but there's not a place for that. But well, great. Well, this has been awesome. Thank you so much for joining me today. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, it was fun. It was a great conversation. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Thanks for everyone for listening. Please rate and review us on your favorite network, and don't forget to share the show. And don't forget to join us for the Virtual Insight Summit on Wednesday and Thursday of this week. We will